they do look and feel like a core Sage 300 product, and they support all the standard Sage 300 tools. For example, dump and loads, the same report writers, the same import-export features. So for all intents and purposes, using our modules would be the same as using accounts receivable, accounts payable, general ledger from Sage 300. And over the years, our modules have been both gold listed and OEM'd by Sage themselves. And this has given us a great working relationship with Sage's development team, which we think gives us extra support from Sage, and the results show in our modules. We have a number of modules. We're in a number of different, which we categorize based on collaboration and intelligence, automation and productivity, tailoring your system, streamlining financial processes, and operations management. But today, what we'll be running through is just a handful of these modules. Two of them in the collaboration and intelligence area. We're going to run through notes and document management link. In the automation and productivity area, we're going to run through report runner and process scheduler, and I'm also going to touch on EFT processing. Next week, we have another session planned at the same time, where we'll be looking at extender data views and optional tables, and how to extend Sage 300 processes to meet your internal processes. So I'll be briefly doing a couple of slides on each module, and then showing you how the module works. So it'll be a little bit of flipping and flopping between PowerPoint and document management link and Sage 300. If you have any questions, you all currently are muted, but if you have any questions, please can you keep them until I finish the module, and I'll just open up for questions very quickly on each module. But at the end, I'll open up for questions on all our modules, or all the ones that I'm presenting today. So document management link. In today's businesses, what we've noticed is that more and more people are working mobile, from home or remotely. Not so many documents are printed and filed away. So there's a huge need for being able to access documents, whether you're remote or even in the same office, but you don't want to keep many printed copies of these documents lying around. So what Document Management Link allows you to do is to store the documents in a file share, or OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, or even in SharePoint if you're using SharePoint, and link to those documents from any Sage 300 screen. So you configure, for example, in your AP invoice entry, you would configure where you want AP invoices to be stored for vendors. And then you can stay from the vendor inquiry screen or from the vendor the payment screen if you want to link back and still show those relevant invoices at that time. So you store the documents once. The documents are not being stored in the Sage 300 database, but they are being linked to Sage 300 screens and data values. So because our modules are written in the SDK, we can also support any third-party developer who uses the Sage 300 SDK as well. SDK stands for Software Development Kit. So like I can attach my AP invoice to my AP invoice entry, I could also attach it in accounts payable, or I could attach it in purchase orders, or if you're using Pacific Technologies purchase workflow, for example, you could also do the attachment and make it available in the workflow products as well. So how it looks is we have an alert box, and here I'm showing you the AP invoice entry screen. Down the right-hand side, you can see our alert box, which you can also see is colored based on the company color that you've chosen for your Sage 300. For those of you who've not seen Sage version 2018, this screenshot is taken from Sage 2018, where they have done some cosmetic changes to the screen layout. You'll notice the grid looks different and the menus look different. So this is a Sage 300 screen, sorry, 2018 screen on the left-hand side. And for my document management link for this particular screen, I have chosen to show in the top box the individual invoice that I'm currently entering. So you can see the document number is INV123. And in the top box of the document management link box, I'm seeing two documents, INV123 a Word document and INV123 a PDF. So this is really, typically you'd just have one copy of the document, but sometimes you might have two different PDFs showing page 1 and page 2, or you might have amendments or additional documentation that you want to show. So what we're trying to show here is you can associate multiple documents, multiple document types with two fields on the Sage 300 screen at a time. So it's linked to, and if you look at the heading, you can see it's the individual invoice for vendor 1200 and the invoice number is INV123. The second box I'm showing is linked just to the vendor number. So there we're seeing all the invoices for this particular vendor. And if you look carefully, you can see the same invoice is being stored in there as well. So essentially, based on my document folder, whether it's a SharePoint library or whether it's a network folder or a Google Drive folder, etc., you can apply filters to the folder to isolate certain documents. So I haven't stored INV123 twice, it's just stored once, but I can filter in different ways to highlight or isolate different documents at different times. So the middle box is showing me all the invoices for 1200, and the top one is isolating the invoice that we're currently looking at on the screen. And the third box I'm showing there is actually my vendor contracts, and these particular ones are stored in SharePoint. So you can have as many different types of documents showing around the screen that you want, and you can show them, you can determine which order that these show, and you can show as many different variations on that as you need. It's important to note that these documents are not stored in the Sage 300 database, and the reason for that is storing large documents or many documents in your Sage 300 database would make the database really, really big. So our decision here was not to provide document management in the Sage 300 database, but just a link to where you're storing those documents. If you do need document management of those, version control, etc., then you would use SharePoint. Otherwise, if you just need to store the documents, you would use a network drive or Dropbox, Google Drive, any of those tools. So I'm just going to flick across into the software to show you that. And I'm going to go to show you that particular transaction. So if I go to my invoice batch entry and I open up a batch that I'm currently creating for my invoice batches, you can see here, similar to the screenshot that I had, I'm seeing all my invoices for vendor 1200, but I don't yet have an invoice for IN 08899. So what Document Management Link allows you to do is to drag and drop that document from wherever it's currently stored. And in my particular workflow, I detach all the invoices that I receive from my email and or scan them into this particular folder. So this has a list of all the documents that I've yet to file away. And let's say this first particular document, I double click on it, open it up, and it shows me it's invoice 8899 for vendor 1200. So I key in the details for the invoice, and then all I need to do is just drag and drop that particular document into this folder. Now, ordinarily, I would have hit the control button and it would move the document in this particular folder. but I just want to leave that there for demonstration purposes. But when I dragged and dropped this document, scanned 2017-0925, into this particular folder, you notice that it renamed it. So Document Management Link can rename and file in the appropriate place. So what has happened here is this document has been moved, well, in this case copied, but typically moved into the folder that I had configured for vendors. And in my particular configuration, I had chosen, so this is a network folder, I had chosen to store my documents in my custom documents folder. I have a particular folder for AP documents, and as it needs to, it creates folders on the fly for the vendors and then puts the documents in that particular folder. And here you can see it has moved that particular document into that folder for me. So now if I was to go and open my AP invoice inquiry, I would still see these documents and this document either in a list of documents like this, or I can highlight individual documents as I see fit. So if I go across to my AP invoice inquiries, my AP vendor inquiries or vendor activity, and I'll look again at vendor 1200 and go to the transactions, you can see again I've chosen to highlight up here the currently active document, but to list all the documents here. So as I go down this list, it would highlight for me that particular individual document, double click to open up. And if I needed to, I could file away additional documents at this stage. Now I'm demonstrating this around AP invoice entry, but you could configure documents around any screen, around items, around sales orders, invoices, any screen that you want to attach documents to and make them available for anyone who has access to these documents whenever they open the vendor activity with this particular vendor on, they would see these documents. And you can configure Document Management Link to either show you just the files in the folder, or it can show you files and folders. So you could have, previous invoices for prior years in folders dated the year and just the current invoices in the current year, if you have large numbers of invoices for a vendor. So that is Document Management Link. Any questions on that? If you unmute yourself and ask the question. Nope, no questions. All right, I'll move on to our product notes. So notes, a similar way to Document Management Link, notes allows you to create like post-it notes and make those available around the data for which that particular note is relevant. So similar to showing my AP invoices in AP invoice entry or in my AP vendor inquiry, I can also have notes associated with vendors or documents or general ledger accounts, any Sage 300 field, and then you can configure which screens that you want to show them around. So this, should cut down on umpteen emails between people and make information available at the time people need that information, hence improving the collaboration in the office. So similar to Document Management Link, Notes is context sensitive, so you can link your notes to customers or items or vendors, or you can link your notes to a combination of fields. So you might have a note for this particular customer and ship to code. So when you're shipping to this particular ship to code, then for this customer, then only show the note. Or maybe you have a note specific to a customer and an item. So when I sell this item to this customer, then I want to see particular shipping instructions or particular QA documentation or notes that you want to tell the customer. Again, because it's written in the SDK, you can attach notes to all the core Sage 300 screens, but also to any of the third parties that have created their products in the SDK. So you might be using norming fixed assets, for example, and want to attach some notes to a category of assets or to a particular asset. So like the document management link, the notes show in the same alert box. So in this particular example, I've this against the order entry screen, we've got a number of different notes. The first note in the box is showing me the credit limit, and that's the credit limit for customer 1200. Because I'm on the sales order for customer 1200, I'm seeing the date and time the credit limit was last changed for customer 1200. So that is a note which was actually automated and created by our module extender, which I'll be showing you next week. But you can also show a free format text note, for example, the middle one, which is showing me that Ronald Black gets a 20% discount on lamps. And the reason I'm seeing this note is because I'm on a sales order for customer 1200, and the currently active row in my order entry details is the A11030. So this note is only visible if I'm on customer 1200 and A11030. And if I was to click on the second line, which is A11050, I would see a note specific to that particular customer and item if there was one. And the third note is actually some text and a picture. So these free format text notes can be as long as you want and can even contain pictures. This information is stored in your Sage 300 database. So we wouldn't recommend lots of large pictures because that is going to make your Sage 300 database really, really big. But if you've got a handful of small pictures, it's a good way to show them when you need it on the screen. You can also store hyperlinks. And when you click on the hyperlink, that website would open up, and that could also be a hyperlink to a document. So if you embed a link to a document on your shared drive, then it would also, clicking on it would also open up that particular document. So let me just go ahead and show you some notes. And in this particular database, I've configured notes around my IC items. So if I go to inventory control and look at my items, similar to the screenshot, I have configured some notes around my Sage 300 items. So here you can see A11030, and here's some notes with some hyperlinks. If I click on these hyperlinks, the underlying document or website would open up. Here's a picture and just a free format text note. So you can have as many notes as you want. You can configure to show the first or the last or all the notes. In this case, I'm showing all the notes. And you can go ahead and edit this note, add a new note as you need to, as you see fit. And there's a matrix of user roles and notes. So you can say who can see these notes, who can amend these notes, who can delete these notes. And so I've configured these notes to show around my IC items. Clicking onto the second item, I'm seeing I've only got one note for that particular one. And on the third note, also just one note for that one. But in my case, I've also configured that my notes show around my order entry as well. So if I go into an OE transaction and open up a sales order, did I click that? Yep. And if I look at my first sales order, and because I've got my A11030 highlighted, I must have not configured my notes to appear here. The only note that we're actually seeing here is my same credit limit note for customer 1200 plus some extender generated notes, which I'll be going through in more detail next week. But this, if you're using our extender module, which allows you to extend Sage 300 processes, you can write, or we can help you write scripts to display custom specific or conditional information. So in this case, we've chosen to show that the total sales year to date for this customer is $20,000, and for this particular item, we've sold them 95 at a net sales value of $8,000, giving us an average price of $85. Clicking on a different item, the net sales doesn't change, but it does for this individual item. So we're now seeing that this particular item, we've sold 5 of a net sales value 49 at $10 on average at $10 per item. We're also seeing document management links. So these particular items are associated with documents. So you can configure both your notes and documents interchangeably in the alert box. And if I was to click on the F9 zoom or details for this particular item, it's at this stage on the F9 zoom that I had configured to show my notes for the sales order for the item. So you can see the same notes are showing that it did on the item master. They're showing on the detail zoom. If I had wanted, I could have configured those to show out of the grid as well. So you may be aware that Sage 300 has also a new notes feature which came out in version 2017. And their notes feature does give you notes on customers and items and vendors. But it's restricted only to those 3 master files, customer, items, and vendors, and cannot be on a combination. And they cannot be configured for some users and not other users, and only to show on certain screens. So the major difference with Orchid Notes is you can configure, you could have notes for order numbers or customer numbers or the combination, and you can also have on combined fields like here I'm showing you a configurable note generated by Extender, which is based on the customer and the item. So you can have your notes specific to 2 fields or completely custom using Extender. So any questions on our notes module? Nope. Okay, I'll go on to the next module, or the next modules that I was going to discuss today, which was Report Runner and Process Scheduler. First, I'll have a look at our Report Runner. So what Report Runner allows you to do is to create menus of both financial reports, the FR reports, and crystal reports, whether those are your own custom crystal reports or the standard Sage 300 crystal reports. And it allows you to create menus for these reports, and then also pre-answer the parameters the way you typically run those reports. So if, for example, for the age trial balance, you typically age as of due date, and you use the cutoff date as the session date, then you can pre-answer all those parameters and only make those prompts available to the users, those prompts that they need to fill in at that point in time. So, for example, for your FR reports, the only parameter you need to enter is the fiscal year and period, and then it'll go ahead and run that report in the typical way that you run that report. And then if you're using Process Scheduler, you can also schedule those reports. So you could set up a schedule, every Monday morning, send the age trial balance of the vendors and customers to the appropriate people, the weekly sales report to the sales staff, and if you need to, you can generate your financial reports as well. So it really makes, if you're using Process Scheduler, so some of these reports might take a while to run. So it's happening after hours when the system is not busy and is, just waiting in people's inbox the next morning. So I think rather than showing you the screenshot, I'll just go straight into the product and show you. So in in Information Manager, we have two icons for your Crystal Report Runner and your Financial Report Runner. Looking first at the Crystal Report Runner, when you're an administrator logging in, you get to see all the menus, all the reports, and you can add new reports to this particular scenario. But if you're the end user, when you sign in, you only see the report groups if you have been assigned security to those reports, and you only see the reports which you've been assigned security to. So in my case, I'm signing in as the administrator, so I'm seeing all the reports. You can right-hand mouse button and add a section, so you can have as many sections as you want, and then within a section, you can right-hand mouse button and add a report, and you browse to find your Crystal report, and you add it in, and then you fill in the way you want to do those parameters. For example, here's a customer aging report. When you normally run the age trial balance, you've got many different parameters, the way that you answer them, your aging date, how you age, your cutoff date, all the different parameters. But here we've got a much more simplified interface. The only thing the user needs to choose in my scenario is the customer group from and to, from this group to that group. So these are normal Sage finders, so you can link Sage finders to your own reports. And they can go ahead and print this report. So all the other parameters that need to be answered have been pre-answered and saved away as hidden parameters. So if I wanted to, I could say, well, I want to go ahead and schedule this. I want to run this report every day at 11 p.m. and save it in this directory and email it to these people. And then Process Scheduler would kick off at 11 p.m. and run this report and email it out to whoever we've set it to run out to. So it could be daily, it could be hourly, or it could be weekly, whatever type of schedule that you want to run it on. And in a similar way, for your financial reports, so this is your FR financial reports, which you would have created previously, you can group those into different groupings, right? In the same way, add a group, and I can add as many groups as I want. And then within a group, right-hand mouse button, add a report, and then I'm browsing to find my XLS or XLXX, which has got my financial report in. And then when I attach it, I pre-answer how I want to run that particular report. For example, this particular balance sheet, when I run this particular Excel report, I normally run it actuals, segments from segment 100 to 100, and these are all from blank to ZZZ. So when I go ahead to actually run that report, all it's going to prompt me for is the fiscal year and period. But I can also tell it to run the report, save it on the hard disk, and also email it to people. So I could, for example, say, I want to run that report, and that report. I could say select print. It's going to run one after the other. In that order, I would pass in the fiscal period and the date that I want to run it for, and let's say just email it off, and I can put one or more email addresses in here. So even though at this stage it's not actually scheduled, I don't actually have to fill in and run each report manually. It could run and email all of them at one time. But if I had Process Scheduler, I could say, run this report group. You run Process Scheduler by report group. You could say, run this report group, pass in this fiscal year and period, and email it off to these people, or save it to this directory, and email it off to these people. So just saving time in the running and the distribution of your FR reports. And I'll just move straight into Process Scheduler because it kind of flows on from that. So Process Scheduler allows you to schedule all of the repetitive tasks that you have in Sage 300, one of them being report running. So, but there's other tasks that you do regularly. For example, checking your data integrity. You should be doing that sort of weekly. You should be doing backups. You might want to do day-end processing after hours. So rather than ask somebody to wait back and run your day-end at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., you could schedule that to run at 7 p.m. every night. Similarly, with the postings, you might want to say, let's run the day end at 7 p.m. and at 8 o'clock we'll post all the batches that resulted from the day end, or straight away, straight after running the day end. So all the repetitive tasks that people need to remember daily, they can schedule and have peace of mind when, you know, that your system's all running and everything's happening as you want it. So we have 3 versions of Process Scheduler. Level 1 allows you to do your data integrity checks and schedule crystal reports. It also allows you to refresh Info Explorer cubes, to do notifications, for example, that you're running out of disk space, or that a new product update has been loaded up, and it can send you an email telling you what version and product update is currently running. Level 2, which includes all of level 1, but also allows you to do day-end processing and posting all the different batches. And level 3, which includes levels 1 and 2, it has more advanced options like running custom processes and or running GL consolidations, imports and exports, updating fiscal periods, etc. So let me just show you a little bit of the setup of Process Scheduler. So you can create as many schedules as you want, and then you use the Windows schedulers to fire these off. So you don't need to leave a workstation open running, you know, for these tasks to be automated. And you can have as many schedules as you want. Your schedules can cross as many companies as you want. So if you have multiple companies, you can do that. For example, this day end schedule here is set to run a day end in Orc Limited, post all the batches, system batches, which are batches that result from the day end in Orc Limited, and then log into Orc Inc. 2 and run a day end and then post all system batches. And you can control, you could say on any level, if I just click across the details, it can show you more detail. You can say, do your task, and then what to do if it's successful. Do you want to send an error message, and what to do on error. So in this case, if there's an error, I'm going to go to line 10, which is run the day end in Orc Inc. 2, I'm going to skip my posting of batches and I'm going to send an error message. Otherwise, if it was successful, just go ahead and post the batches and don't send any error message at all. So you could either always send a message to say it has successfully happened, or just send on error so that you're just alerted of exceptions as opposed to getting too many emails of a day. And the tasks you can do, depending on the level that you buy, you can see there's lots and lots of different tasks which are predetermined. So you can check integrities, refresh Info Explorer cubes, run crystal reports. You can check disk space. You can send emails. And next week, we'll be looking at our extender module where you can write or have written specific scripts that you need to yourselves. And so it can schedule an extender script. An example of an extender script would be to send an email to the order entry people showing all the orders that you expected to ship today and they weren't shipped, or to the purchase order people all the POs that you expected to receive today that weren't received, or to customer service showing you all the customers that are now overdue based on the date, as opposed to being over the credit limit, but now overdue based on the due date of those invoices. You can run a day end and post any myriad of different kinds of batches that you may have. And then level 3, you can copy databases, load databases, you can run your own processes, run GL consolidations, imports and exports, and open fiscal periods and fiscal years by module, and close fiscal periods, but not close fiscal year. So you can, if you have a handful of companies, on the 1st of the month, you could open up order entry, and maybe on the 7th of the month close prior month's AR, but leave AP open until the 15th of the month. So it just stops you having to manually go into each of the companies and select these, select which periods are now open and closed. So that is a quick overview of Process Scheduler. So I'm just going to flick back to my PowerPoint and run through the last module I'm going to run through today, which is EFT Processing. So EFT Processing, which I'm sure you're all doing, but maybe not using software to do it, you're perhaps just going into the website, the bank's website, and keying the payments you want to do. But what EFT Processing allows you to do is to electronically upload payment batches to do your payments to vendors and maybe staff for their reimbursements. But also you can do direct debits to customers if you do have the facilities to direct debit your customers' accounts, which is good for subscription style billing or membership style billing if you have that ability. It's a great time saver and is much more secure than sending out checks, and also it saves money in sending out checks as well. So that's what EFT provides at the base level, but security has become more and more important over the years. So what EFT Processing also allows you to do is to encrypt your branch code and account number for your vendors and customers, and by security group indicate which users can see the full branch, the full account number, as opposed to just the last 4 digits of the account number and BSB code. Also, you can any changes that are done to vendors' bank account details or customers' bank account details are audited, and there's a number of different audit reports showing you who changed what at what stage. Using EFT Processing, you can also email the remittance advice for the payments made or received. So just going into EFT Processing, it's a very simple process in setting up EFT Processing. After defining what format your bank wants, it might be a self-balancing file, or it might be a non-self-balancing file. The bank will be telling you what it needs and what format it needs. So associated with your bank, you specify the particular ABA format that you need. You can have a different format for your payments. I didn't mention you can also do customer refunds via EFT. And you can have different formats for your payments and your direct debits. And in our EFT Processing, currently I'm set up for a Canadian bank format, but we can turn on up to 50 variable fields based on the format file. So if I had chosen an overseas style payment format, I could then turn on all those prompts that I need for the IBAN code and the SWIFT code. And you can have multiple, information associated with the vendor. So you might need different bank account details per remit to code. One could be a local payment, and one could be an overseas payment, and EFT Processing caters for all that. And we're able to turn on context-sensitive help. So, for example, for this particular format, we need to know the destination data code, center code. So we can provide help in the actual format to help people enter that data. So after configuring your banks and your vendors and customers, if you're doing direct debits, in this particular case, I could have multiple payment details for a vendor. Here's when I do my remit to this particular PO box, whereas I use these payment details if there is no remit to code on the payment. And any changes I do here would be tracked and audited. And indeed, I'm logged in as administrator, so I'm seeing the full account number and branch number or institution ID. If I was another user who couldn't see that, I would just see the last 4 digits and asterisks beforehand. And you can have a 2-step approval. One person can enter the bank account details, but a second person can only come and make it active. So you could have a 2, which is a SOX requirement for the approval and entry of vendors' bank account details. Having done that, it's just your normal AP processing or AR receipts processing, if that's what you're doing, and then you'd come and create an EFT file. So you'd choose the batch that you want to do, the type of payment that you're doing, if it's a receipt or a refund or a direct debit AR receipt batch, and you'd go ahead and create that file. That file can be FTP'd straight to the bank if your bank supports that, or can be FTP'd to a local FTP site, which increases your security, as you can have only one person available to log into that FTP site and then transfer it through to the bank. So the FTP details are stored in EFT, which is another security protection for that. But using EFT processing, you can also automate your receipts. If you want to use this feature, for example, in my case, I want to create an AR receipt batch because any invoices that I have created using a terms code of EFT direct debit, those I am able to direct debit against my customers. So like a membership company, if they know that at the end of the month, they're going to get payments for all their membership fees, rather than manually keying all those receipts, they could create those invoices with a particular terms code, and then once a month they could create a direct debit batch, and it would create the AR receipt batch for you. Then, if you have the ability to direct debit, you could send that batch through to the bank. But even if you can't, it still helps you create your receipts without manually keying them all. And you can identify your invoices by that are to be automatically receipted, by any number of terms codes, customer term codes, invoice terms codes, optional fields, etc. And the final thing EFT allows you to do is update your invoice due date. So many a time, if you're doing direct debits against customers, you might want more control on the update invoice due date. Many times the invoice due date is not maintained correctly when the original invoice is posted. So this allows you by customer and document number or multiple documents for a customer to change the due date and the terms date of any particular invoice. It doesn't obviously, it doesn't allow you to change the invoice value. It's really just the due date of the invoice that you're changing. And any changes done here, it's audited, date and time, who changed what, from what to what. So that is really a very quick overview of EFT processing. So I'm going to open up for questions on anything that I've discussed so far. And to encourage you, if you've got any questions, to get in touch with Ebsol, or you could go to our website, orchid.systems, and there's a number of, there's lots of product literature, including videos and testimonials on the products that I've been running through. So any questions, you can either unmute yourselves and ask the question or pop it in the question box. I'm available for questions.
Okay, so does everybody know how to unmute themselves? Yep.
A very quiet crowd.
Very quiet, aren't they? Okay. Well, it's good to see they've come such a long way, Anne.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, process scheduler is fantastic.
Yep. We've put a lot of new features have gone in over the years, really as feedback from customers. I need to be able to do this as well, and this as well, and this as well. So yes, we're constantly adding new features to our modules.
That's great. Okay, so well, if no one has any other questions, as Anne said, you can either email to Stacey or myself here at Envisage, or you can go online to the Orchid.systems and get some more information. Okay, Anne, thank you very much for your time today, and thank you everybody else.
Thank you too, Joe, and I look forward to speaking to you all next week.
Great, thank you very much. Hang on, I think there might be one question here.
Oh, there's a question.
I can see it says Hero from ANC. He's typed in, "Hi, Anne." Quick question. They might be having a bit of an issue with their sound, so he's typing the question in. When we use document management link, we are saving all the invoices in the folder.
I think what your question is
in SharePoint.
Yep, you can either store your documents on a network folder or a folder in SharePoint. Are you saying you're currently using document management link and you're storing in, or you want to store in SharePoint? Oh, okay. So you're not using SharePoint yet. So yes, when I was in my, just flicking back to Sage, when I'm in my document management link, for example, my AP invoices, these documents could be either a network folder, which they are in my case. So these are being stored on my network folder, Orchid, custom documents, AP documents, and my choice is to have a folder per vendor and then all the documents within there. So here at this level, I would see all my folders for all my vendors, and then once I go into it, I'll see the documents for that particular vendor. But this could have been SharePoint. So therefore, what I would configure is my SharePoint site, my SharePoint library, and so this would probably be my AP documents would be my SharePoint library, and then within that I can have a folder per vendor, and so in all intents and purposes it looks identical here, except we can show you the title that you've put into SharePoint, and when we upload a file into SharePoint we also attach tags, metadata tags, to show you that it's this vendor, that it's this invoice, because in SharePoint you don't have to rely on the file name to identify what it is. So we add metadata tags to SharePoint. You configure them, which ones you're using from Document Management Link, and then yes, this list of documents would show to you from SharePoint in a similar way, except it would have the title as well. And when we upload to SharePoint, just like I dragged and dropped in here, I could still drag and drop and rename that file and upload it into SharePoint and specify a title at the same time. Okay, so you're saying you're using SharePoint. Yep, so all you'd need to do for SharePoint is to configure it back into Sage 300, configure which library you're storing your documents in, which folders the vendors go to, and you would probably have to add a metadata tag to say that it's an AP document and to attach the vendor code and the document number too. So you're saying you are using SharePoint. Okay. Yep. You can still have all your documents in a single folder like you're doing, AP invoices, and then you must be tagging each individual one by vendor code and invoice number. And document management link can work with that as well. You don't have to have a folder per vendor. You could just tag them in SharePoint the way you are. The only downside of doing it the way you're doing it, just all in one folder, is if you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of invoices, ultimately SharePoint will start getting slower in showing you the list of invoices for a vendor. But you'd have to work out some sort of archiving to put old invoices in a subfolder or something. But yes, we can work with a single folder called AP Invoice and tagging the documents within that. So yes, you could link your Sage 300 through to your SharePoint documents straight away. Okay, any other questions?
One from Alison.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, no mic. Okay. Okay, there it is.
Okay, we're currently using Eft Processing, but have been unable to transfer individual customer reference through to the bank. Yes, you can certainly, depending on the bank format that you're using, i.e. which bank it is, there's a number of different fields you can send into the customer reference. It could be that you choose to send what you have on the EFT vendor, on the EFT customer. So it could be that you want to type in a reference here and send that to the bank, or you could be wanting to send the actual applied invoice number through to the bank. But depending what you want to do, both of it can be done. It just means your format needs to be altered to cater for that. So if you can communicate with Ebsol and send us through what bank format you're using and what you want to send through, what do you want to send through as the customer reference, and we can change your formats.ini to pick up that particular field. No problem. Any other questions?
Okay, it looks like that might be all.
That might be all.
Yep.
Right. Well, thanks for attending, and we'll speak to you next week.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.